Today we're looking at the 2025.10 update for DDM. So we'll start off by looking at some changes to the administration client, and we'll start off with DDMC 13528, which is changes to the themes in the admin tool. So the themes can be found up in the top right, and we've updated these themes. A particularly interesting one is the Windows 11 system. So if you change your Windows system between light and dark, DDM will update with it, but you can manually select a theme that you like outside of that. Next, we'll look at DDMC 7512, and we've added the ability to set a maximum query limit. So that can be found under System Settings. So previously we could set a default query limit, which is this option here, but that meant that users could set a much larger personal query limit, and those large searches put more load on the server, so it just allows you to optimize that a bit more. So I've set my query limit here to 1000, and if we make changes, we do have the option here to apply those to users, so we can push that change out once we've made it. If I just jump over to the Office client, we can look at the other end of that change. So under Tools Options, under Searching, here we can see the default query limit and the maximum query limit. So if I try to input a query limit that exceeds that quantity, it tells me that it's not allowed, but I can set a query limit up to that 1000. Let's head over to the admin client again. So those are the admin changes. So we'll move on to the version updater, and we'll start with DDMC 13616, which is the Inventor version updater. So the version updater can be found under CAD and neutral files, CAD settings, and under Inventor, we've now added the ability to launch the Inventor version updater directly from the admin client. Previously, you had to launch this from the file system. Now, moving on to DDMC 13615, this is also applicable to 614 and 513. So we've made some changes to the options in the version updater. So if you haven't used the version updater before, it's a tool that allows you to update all of your files to the current CAD version that you're using on your system. So in this case, I'm using Inventor 2026, but my files are 2024, so it allows me to upgrade all of those to that file version. Now, the big change we've made is we've aligned all of these settings between Inventor, IronCAD, Solid Edge, and SolidWorks, so all the options are the same now. If you haven't used this before, I'll just talk through some of these options. So we can specify whether we're processing the latest issue only or all files on the system. We can specify whether we process from the newest files first or from the oldest files first. We can specify whether we're processing drawings, parts, or assemblies, and we can configure any combination of those. We have the ability to restrict to specific numbers. We also have the ability to restrict to specific CAD versions. So if you've got files that range across a number of different versions, we can do one version at a time to reduce that load as you're processing them. And we can specify by the last save date range. We've got a few options here. We can specify the last week, month, year, last year, or we can specify from dates and between dates. So if I select the between dates option, I can select 2 dates that we will process between. I'll just set this back to all. A new thing that we've added, this is DDMC 13660, just jumping ahead slightly, is the ability to restrict by business unit. So if you've got a database with a lot of business units and a lot of data, and perhaps those business units are working on different versions of a CAD tool, we have the ability to restrict by a specific business unit. And also on the subject of a large database, if you have a replicated system, we have the ability to process files from all DDM servers, or if we uncheck this item, we'll process only files from the file server we're connected to. Below this we have the run details, so this is how the process will run and how long it will run for. So I could set this to run until all of the files have been processed on my database. I could specify that it runs for a set period of time, so if you're running this on a lot of data, you might want to specify that it runs for an hour each evening when the system isn't being used. We could also specify for a set number of records, and we have an option here that allows us to specify how often the CAD system is restarted, and the reason for that is it clears the working memory and keeps things running smoothly. And we've added some additional information below. The points of particular interest, it tells us how much file server space is free, and tells us how much estimated space is required for the version updates we're about to do, so we don't ever run over our disk space. If we move on now to DDMC 13599, this again is also applicable to 1360, 601, 602, and we'll also look at 13688, and we've added a display items tab, and this tab will show us data that requires processing. So we can see here I've got the files from the 2024 version and that match the filters that I've set on the previous page. If I had 2026 items, they wouldn't show here because those items don't require processing. So this is quite useful, one, to see what files you're about to process. But if you have some files that don't process correctly, you can actually see which files they are and start to investigate what's happened with those. Now this tool is available for all of the version updaters, and we've also added some other useful options here. We can specify the number of results to show. So again, if you're working with a large data set, we can fine-tune just how many entries we're shown at a time. We've got a search field here which will search against any of these columns here. So if I were to search for part, for example, it filters down just to parts. If I had multiple file versions, so I've got CAD 2024 here. If I search for 2024, it will show me files from 2024, but we can see it also checks against the last save date as well. We can sort each of the columns, so I can organize the data how I want to see it. We can also filter each of these columns, so again I can select assemblies here just to see the assemblies that are listed in the table. Now when we get to parts where it's not processed correctly, we have the ability to copy item numbers, so we can copy that item. If we head back over to the Office client, I can paste that number in to run a search. Now when we've got a lot of data, we've also added the option to export all of these to Excel. So you can export all of that information. You can work through line by line using the button here in the top right. So next we will move on to multi-factor authentication. So on DDMC 10818, we've added support for multi-factor authentication for the Office and admin clients, and with that we've made a few changes. So previously all the multi-factor authentication options were found under the web client where it was applicable. These can now be found under System and Security, multi-factor authentication. Just tidy that up. So here we can set the prompts for the two types of authentication that we have. So we have email-based authentication and app-based authentication. And here we can specify the prompt that the user receives depending on the authentication they're using. And we can also specify the grace period for attempting to log in using the authentication here. In order to apply the authentication, we need to head to Groups. And then if we select one of the groups we want to apply this to, we can right click and edit, or we could edit from the ribbon as well. And here we can see we can set the multi-factor authentication for the web client, and we can specify whether it's the Authenticator app or the email, and we can specify how long that authentication lasts. And again, for the Office and admin client, we can specify here. So if I set this to email and confirm that. It's also important to note that under the right-click menu, we have the option to send the multi-factor authentication instructions. So that's particularly important if you're using the authentication app, as it will contain the instructions. We also have the ability to reset any authentication for the next web login or the next Office login. So if I send that multi-factor authentication and head over to the Office client, I'm just going to log out here and log back in so we can see what that looks like. So the login, it appears as usual, but once I begin the login process, I'll be prompted to provide my authentication code. We just go back to the admin client for a moment. We've made some changes to the email process that's linked to multi-factor authentication. So under System and Email, under Email Queue and Log, we can now see the multi-factor authentication emails that have been queued and sent. So this is particularly useful when you're setting up multi-factor authentication, and also when you're setting up new users and you're trying to troubleshoot. I'll just pull up the email a second. So this is an example of the email I've received with my authentication code. So again, copy that and enter it in here. And now this login will be verified for 30 days as it's set with my options. So next we're going to look at a new tool, which is batch printing. And to set this up, we need to head over to the server. So I'm just going to come over to my server here. And the first thing we need to do when we set up the batch print rules is there's two areas we need to set this up. We need to set it up in the admin tool, and that can be found under System and Batch Printing. And we have the options in the ribbon to create, edit and delete, and those are the same options that are available under the right-click menu. We can see I've already got a batch print rule set here, but we'll create a new profile. The first thing we need to put in here is just a name for the batch print rule, and that's how it will appear in the Office environment. So for this example, I will call it purchasing batch print. We have a description, and that's the description that will appear in the admin client. So it's good to put a suitable amount of information so other admin users can understand what the rule is for. But for this, I'll just call it purchasing. The file formats, these are the files that will be exported from DDM to a file location where FolderMill will pick it up to batch print. And as we input those file types, the first file type that matches is the file that will be picked up. So for example, if I have a .pdf and a native file, if there is no PDF, it will pick up the native file because the native file comes second. But if there is a PDF, it will pick up the PDF first. So it's important to understand that when you're setting up the print rule, because the file location, which we'll look at next, needs to be accessible by the server. And if it's using native files for CAD environments, for example, so if it's picking up an Inventor file, it needs to have access to the Inventor CAD tool so it can print the file. So the output folder is where these files will be put, so that FolderMill can pick them up. So if I just minimize these for a moment. No, I can't. We'll just go through File Explorer then. And if I head to my desktop, I've created a folder here called Batch Printing. And within here, I've set 3 separate folders. So each folder, if it's using a different printer or a different set of rules, will need its own folder. So the first print folder I've set is for my first rule that already existed. So we're going to use the printer 2 location. But my toolbar is missing there. So I'm going to cancel that one for a moment, and we'll go back into my existing rule. So we can see here that I've used the printer 1 location for the location where those files will be exported to. And then we have a checkbox to state whether this rule is enabled or not. So you can create rules, and rather than deleting them and starting again when you want them again, we can just turn them on and off here. The next section is the groups. So as you set up these groups, you don't necessarily want all users to have access to all of the batch print tools you have available. So for example, you may have a printer in engineering, a separate printer in production, a separate one in purchasing. So you can control who can access each of those rules. So this is my engineering rule, so I've selected the engineering department to have access. So if we confirm that, the next thing we need to do is set up the batch print rule in folder mill. So folder mill is a tool that will monitor a file location, and then we can set it up to automatically produce either PDFs or to batch print in this case. So I've got a rule set up here, which we'll edit. So we can give this this rule a name, and then we have to point it to the same location. So if I were to scroll across here, we can see it's pointing at the printer 1 location, the same as my engineering rule. Here I set that when the files are processed, they are to be deleted after 1 day. So because this is a batch print rule, we don't want to fill up a folder with batch print items. And at the bottom is where we set a print rule. So if I select create new action, here I'll select the print document. This is where we'll find our available printers, and we can set our print options, and we have access to the advanced settings as usual. So I'm just going to cancel that because I've already got a print rule set. So we'll come out of here. So we can see that folder mill is monitoring the location, waiting for files to be printed. So if we head back over to the office environment, and if I have a look at my recent items, I can select a few drawings here, and under right click I can go to send to, and I have the batch print option there, and we can see my engineering batch print rule. So if I select that, I'll then be shown the file types that are being exported. So I can see that these are all going to be PDFs because I had the PDF option before the native option, and I can turn these on and off if they are file types that I can't use. If we confirm that, it confirms that the 3 files have been sent. If we jump back to the server, we can see now that the files are being picked up for processing, and those jobs have now been completed and printed. So that's the batch print rule. So we'll move on to the DDM Office client now. So get that out of the way. So first of all, we'll look at DDMC 13370, which is an overhaul to the tools options. So under tools options, you may have noticed this earlier on, we've actually updated the menu here. So the sections are now available down the left rather than the tabs that we used to have at the top. And then within each tab, you've got the various subsections here, which can be maximized and minimized. And what we've also tried to do is reduce the number of options we had available here to simplify this menu. So one thing you should notice is that the prompts that used to be one long list is now separated out amongst each section. So if I go to the bottom of the general section, we've got the relevant prompts here that could be turned on and off. If I head to searching, again, if I scroll down, we can see the prompts that are relevant to searching. And that's true across all of the sections here. So it tidies it up and it makes it more obvious what the prompts actually apply to. Next, we will look at DDM C3720. Would like the ability to create advanced or form searches where the criteria for user fields includes current users. So if we head to a form search and look at the when and who options, now previously under the created by or last modified, we would find just the users that exist in the database, but we've added a new option which is the current user. So this is particularly useful if you're setting up saved searches that can be applied to other users. So if we go into save searches and then organize saved searches, I've got an example of some searches in my database, and if I look at the folder that those searches are contained with, I have an option here for making private or making public. So here it's currently set as a private folder, here it's set as a public folder, and what that means is other users that log into the system will be able to access these searches. So by setting the search as current user, you can make one search that can be used by all users on your database. So DDM C13568. We've created a log management tool to help us with improving IronCAD integration. And what that means is we've got a start log and stop log, and we can, when users are experiencing issues, you can log exactly what's happening. So if we start the log now, and everything we do in this system will be logged in a folder. So as an example, I'll just find a file that we can load. Parts. And we'll load this item here. Load that in. If I head to the DDM ribbon, if I stop the log now, this will have created a log file that we can then share with the support and development team so they can understand exactly what steps were taken when an issue occurs, so we can better diagnose and improve it. But those files can be found under the open log folder. And we can see here I've got the DDM CAD logging file here, which you can then share with our support team. Okay, so we'll move on to the single save. So the single save, these changes are applicable to all of the CAD tools that use the single save integration. So that will be IronCAD, Solid Edge, SolidWorks. So if we go to save this assembly, so first of all we're looking at DDMC 13555. And this is an option to ignore any items where save is required, but users do not have permission to overwrite. In fact, that's a bad example because that is just a single component. Let's find an assembly to load instead. So here we can see on this assembly, all of my items have refresh parameters. They're not the correct issue. And most of these items that are used in the assembly are superseded, so they're in a state where I can't save them. We continue to load that in. And we head over to save this assembly. So we can see that all items in this database require, or in this database, in this assembly, sorry, require saving. If I flag the first item as a new item, we've added the option here, which is ignore all not modifiable. So whenever we've got items that have refresh parameters, or we have items where they've been loaded but they're from a previous CAD version, we can select this option to quickly turn off those items that we don't have the ability to save. So in this case, these superseded items. So if I confirm that, you can see it's marked them all as unchanged straight away. So it just speeds up that process if you've got any files like that. Now, if you do have files like that, again, I'd look at the version updater and the action client for clearing your refresh parameters and updating your file versions. Next, we've got DDMC 13642, which is an option for including drawings. So you'll notice here by default the drawings are not included. Now the reason they're not included now is to basically reduce errors. If you're making changes to parts, generally what you will do is open up those drawings and confirm they're correct, and this just stops that happening by accident. So I have the option here to include drawings. Now in this case, because I've marked this part as new and it's going to have a new part number, it doesn't find the associated drawing, but for the components we can see that those are now included. And this is particularly useful when using the save copy option, because it can cause issues with links between drawings and parts. Next we will look at DDMC 13556, which is an option to display each item individually at the top level. So what we can see here is a structured view at the moment. I don't have a more complicated example to demonstrate this with, but if I select the flat view, what this does, it flattens the view and shows us each entry or each item a single time, so it can simplify very complex assemblies into a single view. Obviously that combined with the ignore not modifiable, the drawings not being included by default, and then on top of that I can use the only show action required, means we can create very simple saves from very complex assemblies. So those are the changes to the single save. So we'll move on to some changes we've made to the web client next. So the first one we'll look at is DDMC 12748, which is similar to the current user change. It's the ability to use the current user in our web widgets. So first of all, in fact, let's close some of this down. Cancel that. Now in the admin client, if I go to web widgets, I've got a widget that I've created here, and this applies to the current users. So if we look at our row count, I've added in the current user tag here for the row count, and also for the query results. If we head over to the Office client, the web client, sorry, we can see we've got the parts created widget here, and it's user specific. So what that means is we can create, similarly to the Office environment, we can create a single search that references the current user that then can be applied to all dashboards and will match the current user that is logged in. Next we'll look at DDMC 13507, which is when clicking a widget of a specific favorite, that should take you to the results. So again, with these widgets, on the parts created, if I select that widget, it will take me to the results for that widget. Likewise, for the folders widget that I have here, if I select that, it will take me to the folders that I currently have referenced in that widget. So it just allows you to quickly go from just data to the actual information within those widgets. Now we have DDMC 12808, which is the ability to search for assemblies within the search criteria dropdown. So what we've essentially done is we've updated this search dropdown so it matches the office environment now. So now we can search for parts and assemblies, drawings and documents. So if we run a search against the assemblies, that will take me on to our next enhancement, which is DDMC 13476, which is in the bill of materials header section. We've added a burger menu that allows you to choose the columns. So if we have a look at this assembly here, we can have a look at the bill of materials. And if I change this first of all to the list view, and we've got these three buttons here which open up the column chooser. Now the first drop down we have is where the object types will come from. Now by default that's on bill of materials. The reason it's on bill of materials by default is it gives us access to the parts and bill of material object types, which are the most common attributes used for your bill of materials. So here I'll select parts. Now these are the attributes that are available within that object type, and what we can see at the bottom of the screen are the attributes that are currently listed in our bill of materials. So here I could select IP rating as an example, and I can add that, and that will appear at the bottom of our column chooser. I've got the up and down arrows here, so I can move this item up the table. If I move this all the way up to the top, so that's now the first option. If I select save and we come back to the bill of materials, we can see that the IP rating is now the first option in our bill of materials. So it allows you to customize this view the same as you can in the bill of materials editor in DDM Office. Now these changes are persistent for the user, so making this change in one assembly will apply the change to all assembly views for that user. Additionally, we've made a nice quality of life improvement here. So if we look at the structure, the structure for this, and we look at the drawing here, we can see we've got the PDF icon. Now previously, when selecting a PDF, it would force you to download the file and then open it locally. As you can see, we now are able to open that directly in the web browser. And we can do that wherever we see the PDF icon. So if I go into this part, I can also select the PDF preview there, and it will also open it into a quick preview window. So those are the updates to the web client. Well, we've covered changes to the admin client, the version update and multi-factor authentication and batch printing. We've covered changes for the Office environment and the web client. So those are the interesting updates for the latest DDM update.